My name is Sarah Thornton, 24 years old. You ever get roasted so casually by your own family that it feels less like a joke and more like a verdict? That was my Tuesday. The verdict arrived in the family group chat, the one stuffed with grainy selfies, birthday gifts that have been recycling since 2012, and Aunt Tricia's daily inspirational quotes that read like they were torn off the wall of a gas station bathroom. I usually mute it, skim it, forget it, but not this time. Trish dropped a meme into the chat, a cartoon of a bearded guy with a crooked cap squinting at a furnace, coughing smoke. Big red letters screamed, "Trade school yields failure with tools." My name was tagged twice beneath it. Then she added, "Couldn't resist. Sorry, not sorry." Rachel replied, with a skull emoji and a row of crying laughter faces. Mom didn't type a word. She just reacted with the laughing emoji, the digital version of a polite chuckle while someone's heartbeat slows on a cold table. I stared. Something small in me snapped. Not a scream, not a fight. More like the sound a thread makes when it finally breaks after you've been tugging at it for years. I clicked leave conversation. No dramatic exit, no goodbye monologue, just a quiet door closing, a silence that felt like a blanket. The thing about silence is it gives you room to hear what's real. Here's mine. I've always been a hands-on girl. At 11, I took apart our microwave to fix the stuck turntable. Failed spectacularly, but I tried. I rewired our porch light with a tutorial I found buried 3 pages deep on a sketchy DIY forum. My room looked like a small hardware store. Sockets, stripped wires, busted remotes. I didn't collect dolls. I collected drivers and bits in a coffee tin with a dented rim. My parents weren't cruel, just calibrated to a different frequency. Dad's an accountant who treats spreadsheets like temple walls. Mom teaches biology and believes anything worthy lives inside a textbook. When I'd show a project, they smiled like I'd finger-painted a miracle. Meanwhile, Cousin Rachel announced pre-law, and they cut a cake with gold sprinkles. At family dinners, she delivered mini State of the Union speeches about internships, while my updates landed like coasters under sweating glasses. After high school, I tried college because that's what you do when applause is a currency you still want to earn. 2 semesters later, I felt like I was running in shoes, 2 sizes too small. I could memorize managerial accounting terms, but I was daydreaming about pressure differentials and condenser coils. So I did the scandalous thing that was somehow less scandalous than suffocating. I left, enrolled in trade school, HVAC with a heavy electrical track, and picked up part-time work with a local tech named Vince. Vince is former Navy, mid-50s, back that complains louder than a bad fan belt, eyes that miss nothing. The day I miswired a thermostat, he didn't sugarcoat it. The next morning, he handed me his backup multimeter like a knighting sword. "You've got hands that listen," he said. "Don't let anyone who's never pulled a panel tell you who you are." There's a particular peace that lives inside a fix. Crawl space cold, biting your knuckles, flashlight clenched between your teeth, the first healthy hum after you trace a problem back to a single frayed line. That hum moves through your bones. People call it manual labor. I call it hearing a house breathe again. Most days I didn't think about the family chat, but quiet has its predators. Memory, mostly. And winter was nosing its way into town like a stray that never truly leaves. Forecasts kept muttering about a hard freeze. Vince stocked filters like they were canned peaches for a storm cellar. I sharpened my routine. Class in the morning, calls in the afternoon, side jobs on weekends. My phone's weather app was a heartbeat monitor, and the town's Facebook group sounded like distant thunder. Not everyone treated my path like a punchline. My boyfriend, Noah, would tuck warm pastries into my hands at dawn and say, "Eat before you argue with a heat pump." That was love. Carbs as diplomacy. He never tried to rename what I did. He just asked good questions and listened to the answers. Once, months before the meme, we'd bumped into his ex-girlfriend at a coffee shop. Layla, ballet flat smile, eyes that measured. She squinted at my work jacket and said, bright and brittle, "Oh, that's so practical." The words slid over my skin like a cold spoon. I filed it away. Some people weaponize compliments so softly you almost say thanks. After I left the family chat, I expected a ping, a "you okay?" or even a faux concerned "oops, did we go too far?" Nothing. just digital snowfall. I scrolled our old threads sometimes, the birthday wishes, the engagements, the performative pride, and wondered how I could be so related to so many people and still feel like a seat filler at a ceremony that uses my last name but not my voice. Silence hardened into space, and space warmed into peace. Trade school wasn't a detour. It was a door with my name on it, opening towards something that finally made sense. I was months from finishing the program. I could tear down and rebuild a blower assembly without checking notes. I knew which basements smelled like dust and defeat and which ones were just lonely. I learned to label wire nuts the way poets label feelings. Then Tuesday happened, and the meme landed like a snowball with gravel packed inside. I didn't clap back, though I wanted to. I took a screenshot and slid it into a private folder on my phone titled, "Do Not Explain." I showered off the day's grit and tried to unhook my jaw. The apartment radiator hissed a rhythm that sounded like a dare. The first ring came 3 nights later. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, then listened in bed with the lights off. "Hey, it's Trish. Our furnace died, and there's a freeze warning. It's supposed to drop below 0 tonight. The kids are already bundled up. I heard you do heating now. Please call me back ASAP. Seriously, please." I stared at the ceiling and felt something complicated. The shape of a bruise you've forgotten until you brush it. A week ago, I was a punchline. Tonight, I was a lifeline. I didn't call back. Not yet. I set the phone down and let the radiator's hiss count out the seconds. Compassion is a reflex. Boundaries are a practice. I was new at the second one, and winter had arrived to test it. The freeze swept in like a switch flipped by an invisible hand. Overnight, vents whined in unison, pipes sulked and seized, and everyone who'd never learned the sound of their own house panicked. Vince was right. When winter hits, kid, you'll be the most popular person in town. He wasn't wrong. My voicemail became a hallway of small emergencies. "Hi, Sarah, thermostat blank." "Hey, Sarah, the unit's clunking like it swallowed a wrench." "Sarah, my mom's elderly. Could you?" Several, not me, but a friend, requests that were absolutely the caller. I triaged. I drove. I crawled. I thawed copper like I was coaxing an apology from it. Then Trish texted, "Urgent, no greeting, no please. Furnace out, house is freezing, need help now." I finished the call I was on, scrubbed my hands at the client's sink until the cold crack on my thumb stung, and sat in my van with the heater that never worked quite right. I opened my camera roll. The meme stared back. "Trade school equals failure with tools." My name tagged twice under a punchline her friends probably loved. I attached it to a reply and typed, "Still think I'm a failure?" The typing bubble appeared, disappeared, appeared, gone. Morning brought the predictable chorus. "You're overreacting. It was just a joke. Can't you let it go?" Let it go. As if I was clinging to humiliation like a hobby. I wasn't holding the rope. I was choosing not to be dragged by it. I sent Trish my digital business card. "Schedule at this link. Standard rates. Emergency fee applies." 10 seconds later, my phone rang. I let it pass to voicemail. Compassion tugged like a child at my sleeve. I stared out through the windshield at a horizon the color of a bruise and whispered the sentence I'd been practicing in the quiet. I can be kind without being cheap. It hung in the air like a vow. Outside, the wind sharpened. Inside my chest, something finally warmed. And somewhere between the hiss of my van's reluctant heater and the first service call of the day, I realized a truth that didn't need emojis or approval. Some bridges don't burn, they freeze. And you don't have to cross back over them just because someone else is cold. The wind had teeth that week. By the time I finished my 5th call on Friday, my knuckles were a map of tiny cuts, each one singing whenever metal met skin. Frost gathered on the edge of my van windshield like lace. I could see my breath inside the cab. Winter didn't ask permission, it just moved in. The town's Facebook page turned into a rolling crisis hotline. Frozen pipes, blank thermostats, condenser units that coughed like old smokers. Vince was double booked every day, and so was I. He'd call around noon and bark, "Thornton, you dead yet?" And I'd laugh between jobs. Almost. Almost felt like success. The schedule was chaos, but I didn't mind. Every problem was a puzzle. Every fix was proof that what I'd chosen mattered. No applause, no family dinners, no validation, just warmth returning to a house because of what my hands could do. Still, the silence from my family pressed on me like cold air seeping through bad insulation. Mom hadn't called, Dad hadn't texted, and Rachel kept posting wine glasses and law school hashtags as if she lived on a different planet. Until that Saturday. Trish texted again. Still waiting to hear back. It's dropping to 10 degrees tonight. Please, Sarah. No emoji this time, just words that looked exhausted. I stared at the message. My phone vibrated again. Another client, not family, offering full pay for an emergency job. Decision made. When I didn't respond, Trish followed with a longer message, the guilt kind that sounds like kindness if you squint. I know we've had our differences, but the kids are freezing. I'm not asking for charity. I'll pay whatever you charge. I could almost hear her voice, that shaky righteousness people use when pride is melting faster than the ice on their windows. I took a deep breath, hands trembling from cold and something heavier. My thumb hovered over call. Then Vince's words echoed, "Don't let anyone who's never pulled a panel tell you who you are." Instead of calling, I sent her the link to my booking page again, with 2 extra words. Standard rates apply. Then I put my phone face down and drove to my next appointment. That night, I told Noah about it while we ate takeout in my half-lit apartment. He listened quietly, his fingers tracing the rim of his mug. "You did the right thing," he said. "Boundaries don't make you cruel." I wanted to believe him, but part of me hated how relief and guilt felt so similar. "What if they think I'm heartless?" I whispered. He smiled softly. "Let them. People always confuse boundaries for coldness when they've been living off your warmth too long." The heater hissed behind him, steady and loyal. I leaned into the sound. By Monday morning, the calls had tripled. The freeze was record-breaking. Vince and I worked from dawn to after midnight, bouncing between frozen basements and crying radiators. My hands smelled of copper and insulation tape. At one stop, a client handed me cocoa with trembling hands. "My husband's gone, and I can't even start the fireplace," she said. "You're a lifesaver." I smiled, throat tight. Just doing my job. But when I left, I sat in the van a moment longer, watching her porch light flicker back to life. It hit me. Every house I fixed was warmer than the one I grew up in. Then came the voicemail. "Hi, Sarah, it's Mom." My stomach dropped. I turned the volume down, but kept listening. "Trish told me you're refusing to help her. She has kids, Sarah. You're better than this. Don't make a scene. It was just a meme, for heaven's sake. You know how your aunt jokes." I pressed the phone against my knee, breathing slow. "She's family," Mom finished. "Sometimes we just need to forgive and move on." There it was, the family anthem. Forgive and move on. Translation, pretend it didn't hurt so we don't have to feel guilty. I deleted the voicemail without replaying it. Forgiveness wasn't off the table, but unpaid labor wrapped in humiliation? That deal had expired. The next day, I ran into Rachel at the hardware store. She looked polished as ever. Long coat, perfect eyeliner, boots that had never seen a snowbank. "Sarah," she said, like she'd discovered me at a museum. "Wow, long time." "Yeah," I replied, checking out with my pack of fuses and duct sealant. She gave a brittle laugh. "Mom said Aunt Trish is losing it without heat. You should go fix it. Might help smooth things over." "Smooth things over," I repeated slowly. "Like duct tape on a cracked pipe?" Rachel blinked, unsure if it was sarcasm or metaphor. "Just saying," she murmured. "It's not a good look to ignore family." I smiled thinly. "Neither is mocking them publicly, but you all seemed fine with that." Her face fell, a flicker of something like shame, then defensiveness. "You know how Aunt Trish is." "Yeah," I said, "I do." I left before she could answer. By Wednesday, the storm finally broke. Sunlight bounced off snow like shattered glass. I was fixing a unit on the edge of town when Vince called. "Thornton, you sitting down?" "Not even close," he chuckled. "Got a call from some realtor. Melanie. Says she needs a furnace inspection on a property before it lists. Pays full rate. I told her you're free tomorrow." "Sure, where?" He read the address, and my wrench slipped from my hand. That was Aunt Trish's house. For a second, all I could hear was the faint hum of the working furnace beside me and the laugh that had followed that meme. I exhaled. "Yeah," I said quietly. "I'll take it." "Good," Vince said. "She must have found a buyer. Don't let her sweet-talk you into freebies. Business is business." Wouldn't dream of it. As I hung up, a strange calm settled over me. Not anger, not triumph, just clarity. I didn't need revenge. I needed professionalism. And maybe a photo or two, for the inspection report, of course. That night, I couldn't sleep. The radiator clanked softly in the corner, steady like a heartbeat. I thought about little me, sitting on the floor of my parents' house, surrounded by old remotes and light bulbs, dreaming that one day they'd see my work as something worth clapping for. They never did. But maybe it didn't matter anymore. Tomorrow, I'd walk into Aunt Tricia's house as the professional she laughed at and charge the exact rate she once mocked me for earning. I smiled to myself in the dark. Maybe some lessons need a little cold to sink in. The next morning, the sky looked like a sheet of dull steel. Snow clung to tree branches, and the air was thick enough to bite through gloves. I loaded my toolkit into the van and double-checked my inspection forms. Everything neat, printed, official. The address blinked on my phone, 215 Willow Creek Road, Aunt Tricia's house. My reflection in the van window caught me off guard. The woman looking back wasn't the same one who'd quietly left a family chat months ago. My hair was tucked beneath a beanie, my face pale from long days in the cold, but my eyes looked certain. By the time I pulled into her driveway, the world was still and silent. No movement behind the frosted windows. Her car was gone. A realtor's sedan was parked at the curb. A woman in a navy coat stepped out, rubbing her hands. "Hi there, you must be Sarah?" "That's me," I said. "I'm Melanie Jacobs, realtor for the property. Owner's out of town for a bit. We just need a full inspection before listing." "Owner, not aunt." I nodded. "Got it." She handed me the key with a forced smile. She mentioned there were issues with the heating. Said she had a relative in HVAC, but I guess it didn't work out. A laugh rose in my throat, dry as static. "Guess not." Inside, the air was heavy and stale. My breath puffed white as I stepped over a thin layer of dust that had settled across the hallway floor. The smell hit first: burned dust, old fabric, and something faintly metallic. The thermostat on the wall blinked error. The vents were silent. This house wasn't cold, it was resentful. I unpacked my gear and began methodically. Ductwork first. Cracked, unsealed in places. Filters so clogged, they looked like thick felt pads. Wires twisted wrong, insulation worn thin. It was a miracle the thing hadn't caught fire. Every click of my camera echoed. Every note in my logbook felt like a sentence in a slow, careful obituary. Melanie followed me nervously. "How bad is it?" I crouched beside the furnace and ran a gloved hand along the casing. "You ever see a car that's been running on fumes for years? Same story here. Neglected maintenance, overloaded circuits, outdated parts. This system's begging for retirement." She exhaled. "Yikes!" I smiled faintly. "Yikes is putting it nicely." When I stood, my knees cracked, a reminder that experience leaves its signature. I pulled off my gloves and scribbled on the clipboard. "Full replacement recommended. Unsafe for operation until repairs complete." Melanie peered over my shoulder. "Ouch, that's going to be pricey." "Not as pricey as ignoring it," I said, folding the paper neatly. Outside, the snow had started again, falling soft as powdered sugar. My boots left prints leading back to the van. As I loaded my tools, a familiar number flashed across my phone screen. Uncle Pete. For a second, I considered ignoring it. Then curiosity won. "Hey, Pete," I answered, voice steady. "Ah, Sarah. Hey, kiddo. Long time, huh?" His tone was painfully chipper, the kind used when someone's about to ask for a favor. "Yeah, long time," I said. "Listen," he continued. "I heard you came by the house. Really appreciate it. Trish, told me you're helping out. That's real kind of you." I tightened my grip on the phone. "I'm not helping out. I was hired for an inspection." A pause, then a soft chuckle. Right, of course. But, since it's family, maybe you could, I don't know, help us out on the price? Just till we figure things out?" There it was, the old melody. The one where my work became charity and their guilt became invisible. "I've already sent the report to the realtor," I said. "My rates are listed. Standard, not special." He sighed, long and disappointed, like I'd just refused to donate a kidney. "Sarah, come on, we're family." I closed my eyes. I remember. Then I hung up. By the time I finished loading up, Melanie approached, rubbing her arms. "She said she wasn't sure you were legit," she admitted quietly. "Said you dropped out of college and started tinkering." I looked at her, a slow smile forming. Guess she was half right. I did drop out, and I do tinker, professionally. Melanie laughed under her breath, embarrassed. "For what it's worth, you seem more professional than half the techs I've met." "Thanks," I said, tightening a strap on my toolbox. "You can send her the invoice today." On the drive back, snow drifted sideways across the road, little ghosts chasing the tires. I kept thinking about what the house had felt like. The chill that wasn't just from temperature, the way it seemed to echo with all the years of polite cruelty that lived inside. For a moment, I pictured Trish watching her breath fog up in some rental house across town, complaining to anyone who'd listen that the system had failed her. Maybe it had, but not for the reasons she thought. That night, I stayed late at the workshop. Vince was at his desk, coffee in one hand, paperwork in the other. He squinted as I dropped my inspection folder on the table. "Good job," he muttered. "You look like someone who just exorcised a ghost." "Something like that," I said. He flipped through the pages, nodding. "Nice write-up. Thorough, professional. You're not cutting corners." "Not anymore." He looked up. "What's that mean?" "It means I stopped fixing things for free when the people breaking them call it love." Vince stared at me for a moment, then grinned, a rare, approving grin that softened the lines around his eyes. "You finally sound like a business owner." Maybe I was. I emailed the invoice before heading home. Full price. No discount. No explanation. And when I hit send, I didn't feel cold. I felt clean. The next afternoon, Melanie replied, "They've decided to delay the sale until spring. Heating repairs on hold. Thanks again for the thorough report." Translation, they saw the number and decided to freeze instead. Fine. I poured myself a cup of coffee, opened my laptop, and started updating my website. Licensed, certified, professional. No discounts for disrespect. It wasn't a slogan. It was a boundary written in HTML. That evening, as I stepped onto my apartment balcony, I could see the town glowing faintly under the snow. Chimneys smoking, vents humming, every house breathing warmth into the night. I smiled to myself. Let them freeze if they must. Because I was finally warm enough to stay standing. The cold didn't last forever. It never does. By mid-February, the snow started to soften at the edges, dripping off gutters, like the town itself was sighing in relief. Business was booming. Every morning, my phone lit up with new appointments, quotes, and follow-up calls. People finally knew my name, not as a punchline, but as the woman who could make their house breathe again. And for the first time in my life, I was busy in a way that didn't feel like survival. It felt like building. One morning, I stopped by the cafe near my shop to grab coffee before a service call. The barista smiled when she saw my uniform. "Hey, Thornton, you're the furnace girl, right? You fixed my aunt's place last month." I blinked, caught off guard. "Yeah, that's me." "She said you explained everything before you left. Said it was the first time she didn't feel dumb talking to a repair tech." That simple compliment hit harder than I expected. I smiled. Glad to hear it. When I walked out, my reflection in the glass door didn't look small anymore. Later that day, a client posted a photo on the town's community Facebook page. "Shout out to Fix Right HVAC. Sarah showed up on time, didn't overcharge, and actually explained what the heck was wrong. Highly recommend." Within hours, the post had over 100 likes. Old classmates commented. Former neighbors shared it. Someone added, "Wait, is that Trish Hammond's niece? Didn't she say Sarah dropped out to fix air vents or something?" Cue the popcorn emojis. The comments kept coming, turning my notifications into fireworks. "Looks like that trade school worked out." "Jokes on Aunt Trish. We need more Sarahs in this town." I didn't reply, but I read every line. Then I smiled, not out of spite, but because the truth was doing my job for me. By evening, my inbox was full. "Congrats, Sarah. Proud of you. Always knew you'd make it." Most of them were from people who hadn't spoken to me in years. Even Mom texted, "Your business is getting some attention." That's good. Maybe now you can let go of the whole meme thing. Let go, as if I'd been holding on for fun. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened Instagram, snapped a photo of me standing beside my work van, certificate in hand, EPA certified technician. Caption, "Not bad for a failure with tools. Grateful for everyone who believed in me early, and for the ones who didn't. You helped me work harder." I hit post. Within minutes, it blew up. Clients, classmates, even strangers chiming in. The small-town gossip network was now my unpaid marketing team. 2 days later, I was doing a routine service call when Vince called. "Thornton, you see the town newsletter?" "No, why?" "You're in it, under local business heroes." I laughed out loud, smudging grease on my sleeve. "You're kidding." "Nope." Said something about dedicated tradespeople keeping the community warm through record storms. "Heroes, huh? Don't let it go to your head," he grumbled. "Heroes still need to tighten screws." That night, I got another text from Rachel. "Hey, saw your post. Wow, that's amazing. I might have some people to connect you with. Realtors, clients, you know. Let's catch up soon." No mention of the meme, no apology, just a smooth pivot, like the last few months never happened. I didn't reply, but I did take a screenshot, for the same private folder where the meme lived, the one labeled Do Not Explain. Then, late Thursday night, came another name I hadn't seen in months. Trish. Saw your post, congrats. I know we've had our differences, but you've really built something. Maybe one day we can sit down and talk. Would love to clear the air. There it was again. That neat, polite way people asked for forgiveness without ever using the word sorry. I stared at the screen for a long time, then turned it off. Some bridges don't burn. They freeze. And I'd already learned how to build my own roads across the ice. The next morning, Vince tossed me a set of keys. Your lease came through, he said. I blinked. Lease? For the workshop space on Maple and First. You're ready for your own place. I stared at the keys. Silver, cold, heavier than they looked. Vince, are you serious? He smirked. Don't make me repeat myself. You've earned it. By that weekend, I was standing in front of the storefront. Small, square, and perfect. A faded for-lease sign still dangled in the window. Inside, dust floated through the sunlight like tiny ghosts. But I could already picture the future. A clean counter, shelves of tools, a front desk with my name on a brass plaque. For the first time, I didn't feel like the family disappointment. I felt like the proof that they'd been wrong. Noah showed up after work, bringing sandwiches and 2 paper cups of cocoa. He looked around the empty space and smiled. Looks like a start. It's more than that, I said softly. It's a line in the sand. He wrapped an arm around my shoulder, or in this case, the snow. I laughed, resting my head against his shoulder. The air smelled faintly of dust and possibility. Outside, snowflakes drifted past the window like tiny sparks. Maybe I didn't need my family's warmth anymore, because for the first time, I was learning how to make my own. The lease paperwork smelled like toner and fresh beginnings. I signed it with shaking hands, half from excitement, half from disbelief. By the following week, the little shop on Maple and First had a new sign in the window. Fix Right HVAC. Sarah Thornton, owner. It wasn't big or flashy, but when I stepped back to look at it, something inside me cracked open in the best possible way. I'd gone from being the family disappointment to the woman whose name hung on glass. Vince stopped by that afternoon with 2 coffees and his usual gruff sarcasm. Well, look at you, kid. From crawling through attics to hanging your name on a wall. I grinned. You make it sound like evolution. More like survival, he said. Then, after a pause, you've earned every inch of this place. Don't forget that when people come sniffing around for discounts. That made me laugh, but the words stuck, because I knew they'd come. People always did once you looked successful enough to use. By March, I had an apprentice, Caleb, 19, nervous, all elbows and apologies. He reminded me of myself at that age, unsure but hungry to learn. The first day, he dropped a wrench and went scarlet. Sorry, I chuckled. Don't be. Wrenches fall. People learn. He grinned, relief flooding his face. You sound like my mom. Good, I said. She's probably smart. We spent long days on service calls together, his questions spilling out faster than I could answer. But I didn't mind. There was something grounding about teaching, like proving to myself that I hadn't just survived my past, I'd turned it into fuel. 2 weeks later, Caleb brought up something that made me pause mid-sandwich. Hey, Sarah, he said, chewing thoughtfully. Are you going to that family barbecue next weekend? I froze. What barbecue? He blinked. You're not invited? It's all over Facebook. Looks like your aunt's hosting. I felt the air leave my lungs in one long, steady exhale. No, I wasn't invited. He hesitated. Sorry, I didn't mean... It's fine, I cut in, forcing a smile. Truly, it's fine. But it wasn't. Not because I wanted to go, but because part of me, the part that still checked for my mother's approval out of habit, had quietly hoped they'd try. That maybe, just maybe, they'd learn something too. That night, Noah came by to help paint the office walls. We spread tarps, opened cans, and worked in silence for a while, the smell of paint sharp and clean. You look miles away, he said softly. Just thinking, I murmured, rolling a stroke of pale gray across the wall. About them? I nodded. They're having a family barbecue next weekend. I wasn't invited. He set the roller down and walked over. Do you want to go? I laughed under my breath. That's the funny part. I don't. But I wish they'd at least offered. Like I wasn't a ghost. He brushed a streak of paint off my cheek. You're not a ghost, Sarah. You're the storm that rebuilt herself. Something in me unclenched at that. By Thursday, Caleb had another idea. What if we throw our own barbecue? He said suddenly while we were fixing a vent. I blinked. What? Yeah, a grand opening cookout. Clients, neighbors, your mentor, everyone. We can make flyers and everything. I laughed so hard I almost dropped my screwdriver. You think people would come? He shrugged. You fixed half the town's heat. I think they'd show up just to thank you. The idea sat in my chest, small and warm. All right, I said finally, let's do it. That Saturday, we transformed the parking lot into something that looked like a block party. Folding tables, balloons, a cheap grill Caleb borrowed from his cousin, a handmade banner, fix-right HVAC, now open, and serving hot dogs, too. The smell of charcoal and laughter filled the air. Clients showed up with their kids, neighbors stopped to shake my hand, and even the mayor's assistant dropped by with a "Congratulations, Sarah" card. Vince arrived late, as usual, muttering, "Didn't think you'd actually pull this off." But I caught him hiding a proud grin behind his coffee cup. "Not bad for a dropout, huh?" I teased. He chuckled. "Don't get cocky." As the sun began to set, I wiped mustard off my sleeve and glanced across the street. That's when I saw her, Aunt Trish, standing on the opposite sidewalk, arms folded, no makeup, no fancy coat, just jeans, a windbreaker, and an unreadable expression. For a long moment, we just looked at each other through the drifting barbecue smoke. She didn't wave, she didn't smile, just stood there, watching. Then she turned and walked away. I didn't follow, I didn't need to, because for once, her silence didn't sting. It sounded like closure. After everyone left, Caleb helped pack up the tables. "That was incredible," he said, eyes wide. "You realize you just hosted the whole neighborhood, right?" I laughed, exhausted and happy. "Yeah, I guess we did." He handed me a paper cup of lemonade. "What now, boss?" I looked around, the new sign glowing under the streetlight, the empty parking lot still warm from the day. I said slowly, "we build from here. One repair, one lesson, one day at a time." Caleb grinned. "Deal. But next time I'm picking the music." "Only if it's not country," I said, mock stern. He laughed, the sound echoing in the cool evening air. When I finally sat alone inside the office, I reached into my bag and pulled out a folded piece of paper. The meme, the one that had started everything. For a moment, I stared at it, at the cartoon man, the cruel caption, my own name tagged like a punchline. Then I smiled. I folded it one last time, taped it shut, and dropped it into the trash. Not because it didn't matter, but because it didn't anymore. Spring came early that year. Not the storybook kind with flowers and sunshine, just fewer frozen pipes, fewer emergencies, and slightly warmer mornings. The streets no longer hissed with frost. For once, my van wasn't coated in ice when I left for work. But even as the cold faded outside, I could feel something shifting inside me too, a steadiness, a quiet sort of peace I hadn't felt in years. The business was thriving. Word of mouth had turned into real momentum. Realtors kept my card in their trusted vendors folder, and local stores started asking to partner for system installs. I'd hired a second apprentice, a quiet girl named Renee with sharp eyes and quicker hands, and together with Caleb, we kept the new office humming. Every day, I'd walk in, flip the light switch, smell the faint mix of coffee, motor oil, and fresh paper, and think, I built this. No one handed it to me. No one approved it first. No one cropped me out of this picture. On a quiet Friday morning, while I was balancing invoices, the office phone rang. "Fixed-right HVAC, this is Sarah." A pause, then a voice I hadn't heard in months. "Hi, honey, it's Mom." I leaned back slowly in my chair. "Hi, Mom. I just wanted to say, your aunt told us about your event, that grand opening barbecue. She said it went really well." I smiled faintly. "Yeah, it did." "That's wonderful," she said, her tone careful, tiptoeing around the weight between us. "You've really made something of yourself. Your father and I are proud." It was the word finally that she didn't say that lingered. "Thanks," I said simply. Then came the inevitable shift. "Listen, we're thinking of hosting a family dinner next month. It's been a long time. Maybe you could come?" My heart tightened, but not painfully. Just the kind of ache that happens when you see an old scar and remember how deep it used to be. "I'll think about it," I said gently. "That's all I ask." After we hung up, I stared at the muted phone screen. The invitation didn't feel like a trap this time, just information, and the choice, for once, was mine. That weekend, Caleb and Renee were organizing the tools when Caleb looked up. "You're really not going to go, are you?" I smiled. "You overheard." "Half the office did," he said, grinning. "You talk louder when you're trying to sound calm." I chuckled. "Maybe, but no, I'm not sure I will. Not yet." He hesitated. "Because of what they did?" I shook my head slowly. "Because I'm not angry anymore, and I don't want to go back just because guilt feels like obligation. If they ever apologize, not the kind that starts with if, then maybe." He nodded thoughtfully. "My mom says peace isn't when everyone's nice to you. It's when you stop needing them to be. I raised an eyebrow. Your mom sounds wise. He grinned. She watches a lot of Oprah. We laughed. The sound filled the little office, bright and easy. Later that day, while filing receipts, I found an old note in the drawer, the first business license I ever applied for. The ink had smudged where my hand must have shaken. Back then, I'd written my name too lightly, almost afraid of making it permanent. Now, the signature at the bottom of every invoice was bold and certain. Sarah Thornton, owner. I traced it with my thumb and realized something. I wish I could have told that younger version of me, the one who sat in a cold apartment after being laughed at in a group chat. You don't need their approval to build something real. You just need to start turning the wrench. By May, the shop had a new rhythm. Calls came in like clockwork. Renee handled scheduling, Caleb handled installs, and I supervised, fixing what needed fixing, but mostly watching them learn. One afternoon, Renee looked up from her desk and asked, "What made you choose HVAC anyway?" I smiled, because I liked fixing things people said weren't worth fixing. She tilted her head. Like furnaces? Like people's expectations, I said softly. That evening, Noah stopped by with dinner, 2 takeout boxes and a tired grin. He'd just finished a late shift, but still insisted on eating with me in the office. He glanced around the room, now lined with framed certifications and glowing client reviews pinned to the wall. You really did it, Sarah. We did it, I corrected. You believed I could. He laughed. I didn't believe, I knew. We sat together in comfortable silence, the hum of the building's ventilation filling the space like background music. Outside, the town glowed under soft evening light. My sign reflected faintly in the glass door. Fix Right HVAC. Stay warm, stay proud. Noah reached for my hand. So what's next? I thought for a moment. Maybe hire one more tech. Maybe expand the van fleet. Maybe, I smiled, take a real day off. He squeezed my hand. You've earned that. When he left, I lingered a while longer, walking through the shop's empty rooms. The tools were neatly stacked, the air faintly warm from the afternoon sun. I paused by the front window. Across the street, Trish's house sat dark, shutters drawn. She'd moved back in, rumor said, but I hadn't heard from her since. Maybe she was still cold. Maybe she'd learned nothing. Either way, it wasn't my lesson to teach anymore. As I turned off the lights, the reflection in the window caught me one last time, older, surer, standing in the glow of the sign I'd built. And I realized something simple, something final. The warmest room I'd ever walked into wasn't at a family dinner, or under a roof I'd tried to earn approval in. It was right here, built by my own hands, held together by every boundary I refused to break. I locked the door, smiled into the quiet, and whispered to the dark, "Let the cold talk for itself. I'm done explaining."